Hey guys, so this week we're talking to Dana Diaz, who has so graciously decided to share her journey with us as she has been able to overcome and redefine her life after 25 years married to a narcissist. I know that so many women and mothers have experienced harmful and abusive relationships, and a lot of times it seems almost impossible to rediscover and redefine yourself after that. In this episode, Dana proves to us that it's not only possible, but there's a roadmap and there's a community and there's help to be able to do that. In this episode, we're going to talk about some of the things to look for in narcissistic abuse, some of the things to do if you know someone in a narcissistic relationship, and just ways to promote self-growth and self-development, whether you're in an abusive relationship or not. A lot of these can be applied in different ways, but I wanted to give a trigger warning that this is going to be the conversation we're having today, but it is very important to look at. We also talk about how our family trajectories and how the way we're raised can either predispose us to certain types of people. So as we jump into this, I want you to just take a moment to think to yourself if this resonates with you. All right, let's get into it. Welcome to the Momship Mastery podcast, the ultimate destination for moms seeking balance, connection, and growth in their journey through motherhood. I'm your host, master's level therapist and life coach, Andrea Baker. Here at the Momship Mastery, we believe that motherhood is a purposeful journey filled with discoveries, challenges, and countless opportunities, from self-care strategies to relationship building, from spiritual growth to parenting insights. I've got you covered. So, if you're ready to embark on this journey with us, hit that subscribe button and let's explore the world of motherhood, relationships, and growth together. Remember, you're not alone on this journey, and we're here to support you every step of the way. All right, so we have today Dana on the Momship Mastery podcast. I want to welcome you. Welcome, Dana. Thank you for coming on with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So I wanted to just give you a chance to kind of introduce yourself. Tell us anything you want us to know off the bat about you, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't like to introduce myself with any kind of fanfare because I'm just me. I'm just like everybody else, mom to a 20-year-old son. I'm married to a beautiful, wonderful man right now. This is not my first marriage, though. The reason I'm here and the reason I speak out is because my first marriage, which that relationship was 25 years long, I had to write a book about it because it was so traumatic for me, and I wanted to save other women and men, from being in that kind of toxicity, because it had ended up not just being abusive, but also the abuse and living under those high stress conditions actually made me autoimmune and gave me a lung disease. So I want to really impress to people that you're not doing anything noble by staying in a relationship that isn't functioning for you, the other person, nor the children, especially when there's children involved.
So you said a lot of things, actually. You said one thing, that this is your second marriage and you've gotten into a wonderful relationship.
Yes.
And I want to ask more about that in a minute. But you said this other relationship was 25 years and you have a 20-year-old
Yes.
son. Kind of tell me about how was it trying to raise your son through that?
So the aspect people need to know here is my ex-husband was a narcissist. Well, he still is, and he abused alcohol. I think that what people don't realize about narcissists is that they see this outward expression of I'm so great and I'm so admirable and everybody should praise me, but they have a deep-seated insecurity, and that's where it's coming from. They don't feel good about themselves, so they're seeking for others to validate them. So that's where the alcohol abuse came in, which, I don't want to criticize anybody. I mean, I am now, drinking again socially, whereas when I was with him, I just stopped altogether because I thought if something happened to our kid, I need to be I need to be sober and aware. But trying to navigate things, it was hard because there were so many angry outbursts and there was so much hostility and there was so much, I mean, you could, even if nothing was happening, You know,
Mhm.
my ex could have been laying there watching TV and I could be in the kitchen. You could literally feel the energy in the air, the
Mhm.
tension. I mean, there was no missing it. You know, people
Wow.
have to understand this man had actually, in writing and verbally to other people, threatened my life, said he was planning to kill me.
Wow.
We got to that point. So
Mm.
it was it was such a toxic situation for me, but also my son. Now
Mhm.
my son, well, I think it's a typical boy, they just kind of withdraw. They hide away from that.
Mhm.
He would go in his room, but the second my husband or even me would raise their voice or assert
Mhm.
themselves, or, you know, like conflict was brewing, my son's short
Mhm.
door would slam shut. And I never
Yeah.
wanted him to be that kid that lived in that situation, because I had come from an abusive childhood
Mhm.
and I did the same
Yeah.
thing. I shut myself in my room. I just blocked it all out. At one point, my stepfather actually took the door off of my room, which was
Wow.
so intrusive because I felt so exposed and so vulnerable to more physical and verbal abuse. And fortunately, I took the brunt of things in my former marriage to prevent my
Mhm.
son from that, but it wasn't a good situation. And I wish that I would have gotten out when I had a chance sooner to get out safely versus waiting till he was 17, because I didn't want to break up our family.
Yeah, that's so much there. It's so much really trying to, like you said, trying to protect him and also like dealing with some of those same things that you dealt with as a child. I read in
Exactly.
your bio that you were kind of forced out of an unhappy home. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how do you think that's connected to your first marriage and do you see any
Oh,
connections
it's
there?
Oh, 100%. I'm actually finishing up my next book, like literally finishing it up, like it's going to the publisher this week. So that'll be out hopefully in the next 4 or 5 months. But so many people have
Okay,
asked that, like,
congratulations.
thank you.
Uh-huh.
But it is about my childhood, because you know what? Some people have experienced much more abuse and so much more atrocity and adversity in their childhood. But something that happened with me was, you know, the premise of my birth. My mother got pregnant with me when she was a teenager. And this was back in the
Mhm.
70s when it wasn't okay to do that.
It
So
wasn't okay.
there was a lot of judgment. She endured a lot of shame, you know, within her family, at school. There were all kinds of issues that she was dealing with. Before I was even here,
Mhm.
she didn't want me. And I have to express to people that this isn't something I'm insinuating or interpreting wrong. She actually had her tubes tied immediately after my birth, and I was
Wow.
born on her 17th birthday, which is an irony I'll never
Goodness
understand.
gracious.
So this is a woman who did not want children at all. What happened is that when I was 7 years old, she married the man that she was dating. He was much older. This is my stepfather, much older, but he had the house, the car, all these things my mother thought she would
Mhm.
never have on her own.
Mhm.
So she thought this was the life for us. He didn't want me any more than she did. And he was the one that
Mm.
primarily was verbally and physically abusing me. But he'd wait until we were alone,
Mm.
because she kind of pawned me off onto him. She went to work, she did her thing. I was always
Mhm.
left with him. And that is when it would start. It was, nobody ever
Mhm.
wanted you here. I shouldn't have to pay for another man's child. You're not part of this
Mhm.
family, da, 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 you know.
Yeah.
So just always putting this notion that I didn't fit and I didn't belong and I
Mhm.
shouldn't even exist. Now, I was a
Yeah.
tenacious little thing and I stood up for myself and said, "You can't talk to me that way. That's not true. My great grandma loves me. My grandma
Mhm.
loves me. My uncles love me. Even
Mhm.
my mom loves me." "No, she doesn't. She doesn't love you,"
Mhm.
he'd tell me. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, if I stood up for myself, I'd be met with the physical abuse, and that didn't,
Mhm.
you know, serve me very well either. So, you know, you take an entire childhood of this, even though I knew it was
Mhm.
wrong, even though my moral compass was telling me this man is wrong and that's not true, I was internalizing it. So by the time I
Yeah,
did leave
definitely.
and go out into the world saying nobody's going to ever treat me this way again, what was I? I was a
Mhm.
people pleasing, codependent, starving for any crumb of affection or attention, which basically served me up on a silver platter to anybody who would
Mm-hmm.
want to use and abuse me for their own purposes. So when I got
Yeah.
with my ex, yeah, the first time I met him, it was, I mean, the alarms were going off. I sensed arrogance and entitlement and indifference and all these things that
Yeah.
reminded me so much of my stepfather. But
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, with my ex, it was different because as much as he was that way, there were times where he actually put on the pretense that there
Mm-hmm.
was love and affection there. We could sit on the couch and he would caress my cheek and he would tell me it's
Mm-hmm.
you and me against the world and all these beautiful things I wanted to hear, whether they were real or not. Here's a girl who just wants to belong and just wants to fit and just wants to be loved. And
Exactly.
sometimes I got that.
Yeah, yeah, that's so real, especially people who have experienced trauma. We don't realize that that's normal for us, that dysfunction, that level of like abuse, like it becomes a normal, it becomes normal
100%.
and we normalize it. So when we see more of the same, even though the red flags, it feels like this is what I grew up with, this is what I
Yeah.
know, this is, it's more safe than not knowing what's going to happen. It's like
Yes.
such a narrative of trauma experiences. It's like I understand this and I know this, so it's comfortable, right? So even in your childhood and then growing up and seeing some of the same things and realizing, yeah, this person may not be the best for me, but I kind of know what to expect from them.
Yeah, and it's not just that. I think people, it's not just a mental comfort level, it's physical, because I don't think people
Mm-hmm.
understand either, especially in trauma. The mind-body
Mm-hmm.
connection is very,
Mm-hmm.
very strong.
Exactly.
And
Mm-hmm.
cortisol is that stress hormone that runs
Mm-hmm.
through you during fight or flight.
Exactly.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think that I was so used to that cortisol that I
Mm-hmm. You
needed
needed it.
that chaos. People don't
Mm-hmm.
get it.
Mm-hmm.
Literally is like a drug addiction. You are like a crack
Yes.
whore looking for, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
even in my current marriage, and I'm 48 years old and I know better and I speak about this,
Mm-hmm.
but I
Mm-hmm.
remember very early on in our relationship, I started up with this man, this gentle, patient, quiet man about a bottle of ketchup because I needed to stir some crap
You
up
need
because
it.
I needed
Mm-hmm.
conflict to feel
Mm-hmm.
love and for my
Safe
body to
and loved.
feel
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And I mean, I'm aware of it now. And thank God he's patient. He just leaned up against the wall and
Mm-hmm.
looked at me. And when I was done having my fit, he's like, "Are you done?" And I said, "Yes." And he put his arm around me and we went in and had our
Mm-hmm.
burgers with the ketchup. And I don't even know how could you make an argument about ketchup? But that's the thing people don't get is it's not just like oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's toxic, walk away. My body was addicted. This is what a real trauma
Mm-hmm.
bond is, and that's
Exactly.
something that gets ignored in this realm that people really
Mm-hmm.
need to educate themselves about.
Yes, definitely. Like you said, it's something that's internal and external. We experience it in the world, we experience it in our minds, we experience it all around, and like it's hard not to recreate that. So
Yes.
I'm curious about a couple of things. Of one, how did you transition from like getting out of that traumatic relationship to having the courage to try again with
Well,
your current husband?
yeah, I'll be honest with you. For me, it was something that would have never happened in a normal context. It was just something that kind of, I mean, if there is fate or I'm a spiritual person, like a lot of people around me
Mm-hmm.
were like, this is your, God's gift to you because of
Mm-hmm.
everything you've been through. But I've known my current husband. I've known his family for about 20 years. My son has grown up with his nephews and we live in a very small
Mm-hmm.
towns where everybody knows everybody. So I knew him already, loved his father, his sisters, his nephews, like everybody just knows everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So he was a concerned friend. I was very good friends with his sister-in-law, married to his
Mm-hmm.
brother. So it was just a situation where he kind of stepped in when things became physically threatening for me, when there were a
Mm-hmm.
couple domestic violence incidents that occurred after my divorce. So
Mm-hmm.
he just kind of stepped in as that protective, like, I want to make sure you're okay. And I'm going to check in with you and
Mm-hmm.
make sure and that's when we became closer. And it literally just clicked, which I
Mm-hmm.
love because now that I know that that's a very real thing, I don't understand when people say, like, what are the red flags? What should I look out for? I'm like, don't worry about red flags so much as looking for that person that you click with. We
Mm-hmm.
all have a
Mm-hmm.
friend. We all have one
Mm-hmm.
person in our lives, maybe a coworker, that you meet them and instantly you're like, where have you been all my
Instantly.
life? You can
Yeah.
finish my sentences. You
Uh-huh.
know my thoughts before I'm thinking them. Why don't we apply that to romantic relationships? I have no idea.
Yes.
But with my
Yes.
husband, that's how it was. Everything literally just aligned and came together. And
Mm-hmm.
he really has been the best thing that could happen to me. But now, if I had, you
Mm-hmm.
know, not had him there or not had a situation like that, I'm not sure that I would have been brave enough to go back out there. I was pretty set on, like, I'm just going to go be alone, get a cabin in the mountains, get myself a dog, like, to protect me. Like,
Uh-huh.
I think that's the best thing. That's usually the inclination people have after some
Mm-hmm.
kind of a situation is,
Mm-hmm.
let me go hide and isolate
Hide,
myself
yeah.
because people hurt. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad, and I'm here to speak to anybody that's doing that. I believe me, that's what I was planning to do. That's what I try to do. But dip your toes in the water. I'm not saying go run out
Just a
and
little
marry the
bit.
next man you date like I did, but dip your toes in the water because I'll tell you what, my healing was a lot
Mm-hmm.
faster when, I mean, God forgive me for calling him this, but to have somebody to practice the tools I was learning
Mm.
with,
Yeah.
because unless you are, and people don't want to hear this, but guess what? You can go to therapy, you can listen to podcasts and YouTubes,
Mm-hmm.
but until you are forced to put the things that you are learning into
Mm-hmm.
practice, you will never get good at it. You are never going to learn
Mm-hmm.
how to self-regulate out of a panic
Mm-hmm.
attack or when you're triggered, unless you are triggered. And I'm not saying go dive in, but dip your toes in the water, put them in. Go have coffee with somebody for
Yeah.
15 minutes, not a full-blown dinner. See how it
Mm-hmm.
goes. And if you're triggered, practice those tools that you are learning and
Mm-hmm.
that you've heard about. The more you practice them, it's just like playing piano or doing anything else. More you
Mm-hmm.
practice, the better you get. So now, I'm just 3.5 years out of my former marriage. And I mean, even 2 years ago, oh my gosh, somebody looked at me the wrong way, I'd be in fetal
Mm-hmm.
position in my walk-in closet in the dark, crying in the corner, honestly sobbing, like,
Yeah.
why doesn't anybody love me? Now I let it
Yeah.
roll off. I'm firm in who I am. I know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good with who I am, and I can stand up more confidently, against the world because I want to be a functioning human being. Nobody wants to be that
Yes.
person that lies in bed all
Mm-hmm.
day depressed, and nobody would blame me if I was, but I don't, that's not
Right.
life. You should be able
That's
to
not
go
the
and
quality of life that you want to have.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
it's not a bad idea to just have people that might trigger you and to look at that as an opportunity to heal and an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to practice healing.
I find so much that people automatically go to isolation after being hurt from anything, whether it's a traumatic experience, a bad relationship, or anything. It's like isolation is the number one thing, but that's the place you cannot, like you said, you cannot heal by yourself. You need that
No.
collaboration, you need community, you need those experiences, you need times to get it wrong because you're going to get it wrong.
Yes.
Like you're going to have those moments where you just handle this the wrong way, but you do need to find a good community or a space that will safeguard you in those experiences, whether you're listening and you're not ready for a relationship, but you have a friend group that's safe. I go against it all the time. Isolation is not the answer.
No.
When you're by yourself, it just allows for those thoughts to ruminate. It just allows for those traumas to come
Yep.
back. It just allows for so much negative things, and there's no growth in that. So I love that you said, just you have to get out there. You have to try. You have to practice with someone. You can't do it by yourself, no matter how much you go to therapy, no matter how much you listen to podcasts, like you have to try it. You have to practice this. I mean,
Yeah, and I will add on to that. I mean, believe me, I was an isolator. I mean, I have a friend who would call me and be like, "How many days has it been since you left the house?" 4 or 5, I'm not sure. I lost track. Are you still wearing the same clothes you were wearing 2 days ago? Well, yeah, but the pajamas are comfy. And, like, it was a very supportive friend. And I'm not sure I could have gotten through things without him. But honestly, even now, there are days Because yes, if you are left alone, and even though I'm very far along in my healing, if I'm left alone too long, I'm very aware
Mm-hmm.
I need some attention, I need some interaction, even if it's just
Mm-hmm.
going to the bank. As much as I don't want to go out there and I don't want to,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay. Go to the bank. It's 15
Yeah.
minutes. Drive there, drive back, say hi, chat with the teller, whatever. It sounds
Mm-hmm.
silly, but get out of your house. And I live in the country.
Yeah.
We're on 25 acres. It's children of the corn out here. There is nothing and nobody. So I got to drive to a little town, but even
Mm-hmm.
just go to the gas station, take a little walk, do something to get out
Mm-hmm. Do
there. Because I
something.
promise you
Yeah.
will feel a little bit better, because left
Mm-hmm.
alone, even now these days, if I have, well, there's never nothing to do, but yes, the rumination will take you down that
Mm-hmm.
rabbit hole so fast. And that's not where any of us want to be.
Yeah, like you said, do something different, right? Do
Yes.
something outside of the normal cycle of
Yes.
that, right? If you feel yourself falling into something like that, you gotta break it. We have to find a way to stop it. We can't think that it's not going to happen, because it happens, right?
Oh,
Whether
yeah.
your traumatic experience happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 5 minutes ago, like you're going to experience something that triggers you. But the goal is to stop the cycle, right? To stop the thing that happens after the trigger, right? So instead of,
Exactly.
like you said, going into that depressed mood, or instead of going into that flare up, like do something different. Go outside, go sing a song, go do something different that just doesn't
Anything.
even have to make sense, right? It doesn't have to make sense. People are always trying to make it make sense. I was like, sometimes healing does not make sense. Like you have to do something
No.
completely crazy because it works.
Well, you know what I
Yeah,
tell
so that,
people? I tell people, forgive me for interrupting.
no
I
problem.
tell people to just do what makes you feel safe or
Mm-hmm.
good, or whatever it is you need to feel in that moment. Because this is the
Mm-hmm.
biggest tool that I learned for myself, was whether I was on the verge of a panic attack, I'm starting to slow down. So I can't breathe, or even if something triggers me, something, I would say, what do I need? What do I need right now? What
Mm-hmm.
do I want?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need a hug from my husband? Is he here? If he's not here, I need to call him. Do I need to go outside
Mm-hmm.
and get a breath of fresh air? Do I need to remove myself from this? I need, just take
Yeah.
a minute, stop and fold my eyes and think, whatever it is. If I want a banana popsicle, then I'm going to go get me a banana popsicle.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
Yeah.
whatever it is that's going to soothe you in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
because when you're all flustered and
Mm-hmm.
confused, you are not going to be able to think clearly enough to practice any of a tool. But yes, the more you do it, the more you will automatically practice versus go down that other road that never led you anywhere good.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so amazing to have, like, it goes back to those safe people we have in our lives that we can be that vulnerable with. I
Mhm.
know some people struggle to find that space to be vulnerable, but that's how healing happens. Also, we have to ascribe to that
Yes,
vulnerability to, hey, I'm struggling right now. Look, this is hard for me, and I just need a hug. Like, I just need to be a baby right now, because that space, when you find that safe
right.
person, allows you to just be who you are, even if you're still learning, even if you're still figuring out who you are. Allow me to figure this out, and allow me to really struggle through this with you, knowing that you're here, knowing that you're a solid person, knowing that you're not going to leave me, you're not going to turn on me, you're not going to hurt me. You're just going to
Exactly.
allow me to figure this out. Another thing I saw on your website, it was something that your grandma said, and it was the generational curse. And I was
Yes.
like, I have to ask about this, because I am such a generational person where I love to look at family histories and family lines.
Yeah.
But it was this generational curse about relationships. And I just want to know, like, what is your take on that as it relates to your previous marriage, and then as it relates to your current marriage?
Oh, absolutely. Well, my previous marriage, I mean, I basically married my stepfather. They always say you marry your father. You're continuing those generational things. And as people will see when my next book comes out in my childhood, my mother was basically priming me for that. Oh,
Mm,
he did this, mom, he did that. You need, that's not right. Oh, well, he wouldn't get so upset with you if he didn't love you so much. It's just
mm-hmm,
he cares about you so much that his
mm-hmm,
his anger gets extreme. This kind of
mm-hmm.
talk, and
Mm-hmm.
telling me, I remember I went to her once because a boyfriend cheated on me. oh, well, you
Mhm.
made a commitment to him. Sometimes that
Mm.
happens, but you have
Wow.
to honor your commitments. She was basically setting me up to be her. But
Mhm.
what was she?
Mhm.
She was doing just what her mother did.
Well,
My
exactly.
grandma, I love my grandma. She has been more of a mother to me in my adult life in the last several years, particularly. So I love her dearly. But her marriage was, I mean, it was bad. It,
Mhm.
it was, my grandfather was an alcoholic. I mean, like he had a
Mhm.
liver transplant and
Wow.
immediately went to the bar from the hospital. He even left me
Wow.
in a
Okay.
bar in Chicago, in the city of Chicago, when I was 3 years old, because he found a woman and went home
Wow.
with her. And he brought women to his home, so that my grandma could find them, in
Mhm.
situations they shouldn't be in. He was
Wow.
abusive. He held a gun to my mother's side. I mean, awful, awful life. But you see this, it was
Mhm.
better with my stepfather because,
Cycle. Mhm.
yeah, he wasn't an
Yeah, he
alcoholic,
didn't.
but then
Mhm.
I married an alcoholic,
Mhm.
So the
Mhm.
the beautiful thing is that I think whatever embers were still burning in me from childhood, that tenacious little girl was still inside of me, that once I was done with my former
Mhm.
marriage, once I really woke up, and I was just going on 45 years old, so a little
Mhm.
late, but better late than never. I said, okay, it's kind of like you were saying before with the tools. If you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always got. I didn't want to
Mhm.
do that anymore. I was done. And
Yeah.
honestly, I wasn't sure. I didn't want to go on a search. I didn't want to find that person. So
Mhm.
I'm glad he just kind of was always there. And
He
I
was
always say I
already.
felt like a
Mhm.
flower in a garden. And once all these toxic, those weeds, that I couldn't
Mhm.
see beyond the weeds because they were covering me up and sucking the
Mhm.
nutrients from the soil and preventing me from blooming and living and shining. But once all
Mhm.
those weeds were gone, like I could see him there. He'd always been there, but I
Yeah.
could see him
Always.
and it
Mhm.
just worked. But he's so, I mean, he's nobody I would have ever thought to date or
Chosen
thought
for
of in a
yourself.
romantic way. Right. Because I mean, it's not like I didn't know him before. And I mean,
Mhm.
certainly I was married, and regardless of how crappy the marriage was, I wouldn't have entertained that idea. But
Mhm.
it was just interesting to see that this very different man, this very different personality, I go from somebody who's very reactive and volatile and
Mhm.
intense and to this very
Mhm.
patient, gentle. I mean, he's almost too forgiving, but just exactly what I need. I needed that because, like
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
said, I think one of the most important things, no matter who it is in your life, you need that person that is going to see you at your absolute worst and not judge
Mhm.
you, not make you feel shame, not make you feel any kind of way, but just love you. And even if they don't
Yeah.
understand, they just
Mhm.
accept it and they're there to hold your hand. I always say it's kind of like having a crutch. You might be limping, but
Yes.
you have that
Mhm.
crutch that's there to help you. It's not walking
Yeah.
for you, but it's there to hold you
But it's
up
gonna help
and
you.
make sure you keep
Mhm.
going. That's that person.
Yeah, yeah, I love that because it's like it just reminds me of how gracious God is. Like He will give
Yes.
us something so beautiful after experiencing something that seems like it should have ended our hope in anything
Yes.
beautiful. And it's
Yes.
like, but now you can see relationships in a different light. And it's so like wonderful to me because it's in the same lifetime. You can look back and you can see the experiences of your mother, of your grandmother, and you can see how that shaped your life. And
Yeah.
I like to look back at it with understanding, like and forgiveness. I tell my mother and my when my grandmother was living, like I don't look back at it with judgment. I
Right.
understand where it came from. I understand the cycles and I understand, but I'm also grateful that I was able to change that trajectory. Yes, I may have experienced a part of it because my own traumas and my own experiences, but now with this new person, like you said, like who I would have never chosen for myself, like
Right.
we can create something completely different, right? We can create a relationship built on trust and vulnerability where I can be softer
Yes.
and I can just I can be calm. I can be chill. I don't
Yes.
have to be so hyper vigilant. I can just relax and
Yes.
know that someone is looking out for me. And I think a lot of people struggle to see how they can get to that point. What is your advice for that journey of once you have found this person, how do you let yours be that vulnerable person and just ascribe to that softer place? Just getting back to who you should be or learning who you should be, not based on who they told you you could be.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that is very important when you're in especially with a narcissist, everything was dictated from what I could eat and wear, the lipstick I could, it just everything, where I could work, what I could
Mm-hmm.
do, that, whether I could read a book or not, or go on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
It was ridiculous. So a part of that is really turning inward. What helped me, because not everybody can afford therapy coming out of a situation,
Mm-hmm.
especially if it's, assets, financial, stuff is divided
Mm-hmm.
and what have you. But just going back to that simple question I said I used for regulation, what do I need right now? Or what do I want right now? Once my ex was gone, even though I'm educated and I thought I was independent minded, but I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
even decide what I wanted for dinner and what I wanted to do with my free time, since I had a lot more
Yeah.
of it since I wasn't serving him. But it's just asking yourself what you want, because you know what, if you remove all the restrictions, we can all answer that
Mm-hmm.
question, whether it's in the scheme of life, whether it's what to have for dinner. We all know what we prefer. Indulge
Mm-hmm.
that. And that's all it
Yeah.
is, because making those, I always say it's kind of like making little deposits in your happy jar. What's going to make
Mm-hmm.
me happy right now? Well, I want to wear whatever. Red. Today I decided to wear blue. I don't wear blue that often. Whatever. I want to paint my nails red. That's going to make me happy.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have an ice cream cone right now, even if it's 10 in the morning. Who cares? Eat it. You know what? It'll make you happy, right? It
Right.
satisfies you. But I feel like doing those little things to indulge yourself, indulge those little
Mm-hmm.
whims, doesn't cost anything, not harming
Mm-hmm.
anybody, not going to be a deal
Mm-hmm.
breaker with anything.
Right.
But what does it do? It strengthens yourself. It strengthens your
Exactly.
knowledge of who you are. It reminds
Mm-hmm.
you of who you are again. And giving yourself permission on the little things will lead to giving yourself permission on the bigger things, like dating and like,
Mm-hmm.
making decisions to be in a committed relationship again and all that other stuff. But the other part of it is also looking at the other person, because I think that we
Mm-hmm.
have to look at, even if this is a nice person, because it annoys me when people are like, oh, but it's a nice girl he's dating, or it's a nice guy she's dating. They can be nice all
Yeah.
day long. They could be the nicest person in the universe. Doesn't mean that's the person for them, or you or me or
Mm-hmm.
whoever. You have to follow that, like I said, who you're clicking with. And if it's not
Mm-hmm.
clicking, you
You
can be
can't force
friends,
it.
but yeah, you can't force a puzzle piece in a place that doesn't fit. I
Mm-hmm.
think we need to just take a step back and stop trying to will things to happen on our time.
Yeah.
It will happen, but let it be organic, because I think when we try to
Mm-hmm.
force anything in life, that's when it goes wrong, right? We have to
Yeah,
let things happen
definitely.
naturally. That job opportunity that comes along out of nowhere that ends up being the best opportunity you could have
Mm-hmm.
had, that child that you didn't expect the pregnancy to happen, even though you were trying years ago but never could. And then all of a sudden you get
Mm-hmm.
pregnant and you're like, oh, it's a surprise. And there's this beautiful
Yeah.
blessing. Everything will happen in its own time. And if it doesn't happen,
Mm-hmm.
it's not meant for you. So people
Yeah.
need to just slow down and be patient and let things happen
Mm-hmm.
organically.
Yeah, exactly. And when you were saying like just building that muscle of knowing who you are, like you said, this is a journey and it takes a while to rediscover that, especially when you weren't given the opportunity to have that voice. But also like being okay with that space of not knowing and
Yes.
not forcing anything else in there. Like, okay, I don't know what I want to be or I don't know what I want to do, but I feel the pressure of needing an answer. So we just kind of say or do anything. And I do want like to slow people down, right? Let's slow
Yeah.
down. Like why are we in a hurry? It's like, and now I have to tell myself that too. It's like if I don't have an answer for so long, I'll try to come up with something. I'll just start reaching and pulling stuff. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense
Right.
because I just need to slow down. You need to slow down and just let it be nothing for a little while. And a lot of times we get uncomfortable with that, where the I don't really know right now, but I'm okay with that. And I wanted people to really get to the place where they can be okay, not knowing, and just still like searching, but not doing it in a way that's like aggressive or in a way that's putting themselves down or putting others down. Like we need to just be able to just be okay with the time that it takes for things to grow, the time that it takes for us to discover all of those
Well,
things.
and the other aspect of that is take the time to know yourself and love
Mm-hmm.
yourself, because doing all those indulgent things and living your life the way you want to live it, because guess what, if you don't know who you are, how
Mm-hmm.
the heck is somebody
Somebody.
else supposed to come and
Mm-hmm.
love when they don't even know what they're trying to love? Because I'm going to tell you, when you
Exactly.
are exactly who you are, when you know who you are and you are
Mm-hmm.
living your life, what are you going to attract? You are going to attract
Yes.
somebody that likes what they see. They like the life
Mm-hmm.
you're living. They like the person you are. But if
Mm-hmm.
you don't even know who that is, how are you supposed to expect? I mean, do you walk into a store and say, I don't know what I'm here for, just put something in a bag and let me go home? You can't do that. You want to
Yeah.
know, I want to go to the store and this is what I want in my bag when I leave, and that's what you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be
Exactly.
who you are, not who somebody
Mm-hmm.
expects you to be, not who you think you should be, who you
Mm-hmm.
are, and you will attract the person that you will have a lovely life with.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh, this has been such a great conversation. I'm just really excited. I know that it's going to be so helpful to a lot of our listeners, and
Good.
I don't know, I'm just super excited. But I know you said you have another book coming out and you have the first book out. I want you to just kind of let
Yes.
everybody know how to find that book and how to find you and just anything else you want to give them.
Anywhere books are sold, you can find the first book. It's called Gasping for Air, The Stranglehold of Narcissistic Abuse. It covers my entire relationship, 25-year relationship with my ex. I hear it's a page turner and it's a little long, but I've had people say they've had to take off of work because they couldn't put it down. And I don't want anyone to do that, but it is out there.
Before.
I know, but you can also go to my website, danasdiaz.com. The link for the book is there. You can sign up for emails so that when the next books come out, you will get an email letting you know the next one will be the prequel, which is about the
Ooh.
childhood. And there is
Mhm.
also a quiz on there that you can take to determine if you're in an abusive relationship with a narcissist. And there's tons of other information on there. This podcast will be on there. And I always recommend that if you know somebody who might be in a relationship that you're thinking might not be the best for them, it's toxic, it's dangerous, whatever the situation is, don't
Mhm.
confront them. They know what they're in. They're fully aware of it. They don't need the shame of knowing somebody recognizes that, but send them this link,
Mhm.
send them this podcast and say, this was really
Mhm.
interesting. You might want to listen to it because maybe something will
Yes,
resonate,
definitely.
and maybe then they will reach out for some help.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll make sure that all of those links are in the show notes so they can have direct access to your website and the quiz and all of those things. So I want to thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
That's all for today, and I hope that you're feeling inspired to navigate your shifts with grace and authenticity. If you enjoyed this episode, I want you to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a mom who may just need a little support and encouragement. Don't forget to connect with us on social media. We are on Instagram and Facebook at Momship Mastery, and those links are also in the show notes. Before we go, here's my little reminder. You are an incredible mom, and you have the power to nurture your inner well-being and create meaningful connections and relationships. Embrace the journey, cherish the moments, and continue to thrive in your momship journey. Until next time.